For years, people have speculated that India will one day surpass China in economic power, innovation, and global influence. But let's be honest, this is nothing more than wishful thinking. The reality is, India is not even close to catching up with China, and it probably never will. In this video, we're going to break down 5 key reasons why China will always stay ahead. Reason number 1. Work ethic and discipline. First and foremost, the Chinese work ethic is unmatched. In China, there's a deep-rooted culture of discipline, efficiency, and dedication. Whether it's tech workers in Shenzhen pulling all-nighters or factory workers in Guangzhou working long hours, the Chinese mindset prioritizes hard work over everything else. Meanwhile, in India, to put it nicely, there's a much more relaxed attitude toward work, with frequent holidays, strikes, and inefficiencies holding back productivity. The numbers don't lie. Chinese people work significantly longer and harder than their Indian counterparts. While China follows the 996 work culture, which means 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week in many industries, India struggles with bureaucracy, inefficiency, and a mindset that often prioritizes talking over doing. Not to mention, the non-stop corruption in their politics ensures that there's always money being laundered one way or another by politicians, instead of being used for projects. And as for the workers themselves, they'll be content with doing the bare minimum. In contrast, China's straight top-down system ensures that projects get done, as do the workers. This difference in work culture is one of the biggest reasons China continues to surge ahead, while India has been lagging behind. Reason number 2, superior infrastructure and manufacturing. China's infrastructure is in a league of its own. The country has built a world-class network of highways, bullet trains, and ports that make moving goods and people incredibly fast and efficient. Whereas India still struggles with outdated roads, overcrowded railways, and unreliable electricity. Just look at China's manufacturing dominance. It's known as the world's factory for a reason. China produces everything from smartphones to electric cars with unmatched efficiency, while India's Make in India initiative has barely made a dent in global manufacturing. A few years ago, there was a global shift for companies to stop their reliance on China, and everyone thought that would be the end of China's manufacturing, as if the only reason companies went to China was for the cheap labor. Fast forward a few years later, and you'll realize India's manufacturing has fallen far short of what was promised. Foreign companies still prefer China. Why is that, you might ask, when India is just as cheap, if not cheaper? Simply put, it's because of its seamless logistics, skilled labor, and advanced infrastructure. Big companies have realized that China gets things done, whereas India, not so much. Not to mention, while India is struggling to get its manufacturing sector started, China has actually been moving away from manufacturing low-skilled products to manufacturing high-skilled ones. While they are expanding their smart cities and high-speed rail networks, India is still stuck fixing potholes and struggling with unreliable electricity. The gap is simply too wide. Reason number 3, cultural priorities, progress versus division. Another one of the biggest reasons China stays ahead of India isn't just economic, it's cultural. The Chinese people are single-mindedly focused on progress, national development, and economic growth. There is a strong sense of unity and collective responsibility where people are judged based on their work ethic and contributions to society, not their religious or ethnic background. From childhood, Chinese students are taught the importance of discipline, education, and national pride. Whether it's in the classroom, the workplace, or everyday life, Chinese citizens are motivated by a shared vision of making their country stronger. Now, compare that to India. Instead of a culture focused on progress and hard work, India remains deeply divided by caste, religion, and regionalism. These divisions aren't just minor issues, they are embedded in the very fabric of Indian society. Even today, in the 21st century, people in India are judged based on which caste they belong to, rather than their skills or contributions. Not to mention always being caught up in religious disputes, conflicts, and superstitions that often take precedence over logic and progress. Just look at the headlines. Temple disputes, religious riots, and laws based on religious identity dominate Indian politics. Instead of coming together as one nation, Indians are constantly divided along religious lines, which leads to social unrest and political instability. This obsession with religion often leads to wasted energy on debates and conflicts that do nothing to push the country forward. This leads to discrimination in schools, workplaces, and most definitely government policies. While China is investing in its next generation of engineers and scientists, India is still debating caste quotas in education and job reservations. Do we even want to get into the issue of political chaos? While India's government has been focused on religious disputes, laundering money whenever and wherever they can, and arguing over petty problems, China has lifted 800 million people out of poverty, completely revamped their entire country, built beautiful modern cities along with unbelievable architecture, and become a global powerhouse. And the crazy part, they're still going just as strong for even more progress. Reason number 4, political stability and strong leadership. Contrary to popular belief, one of China's greatest strengths is its strong, centralized leadership. The Chinese government operates with long-term planning and decisive action, allowing it to execute massive infrastructure projects and economic policies without delay. Major initiatives like high-speed rail, smart cities, and economic zones are completed within years, while India takes decades to finish even basic infrastructure projects. They also make sure to plan years and sometimes decades in advance, and oftentimes the fruit of their labor only shows its effects much further down the line. Corruption is also almost nil, contrary to popular perception. The West has been clamoring for decades about how corrupt China's government is, how they are a dictatorship, and that the Chinese citizens are all dirt poor and are treated as slaves. The reality could not be further from the truth. China has performed what could be described as a real-life miracle, lifting over 800 million people out of poverty in a matter of just a few short decades. If you were to ask the average Chinese citizen over the age of 50 to 60, they would tell you very clearly just how much the quality of life has improved for the regular citizens in the past few decades. China moves so fast that if you were to visit it once every 10 years, it would be a whole new and improved country every single time. What other countries' citizens could honestly say the same about the help their government has given them? India's democracy, while praised by the West, often leads to political instability, corruption, and slow decision-making. Protests, bureaucratic red tape, and political infighting constantly delay progress. The amount of taxes on the middle class is absurd, and yet the money just seems to be going into a black hole. The average Indian's quality of life is among the lowest in the world, and while you'll often hear constant praise about India's GDP, the average life of the citizens does not reflect the improvements at all. The money in the democracy seems to only be going to the rich. Wealth inequality is absolutely absurd, and proper healthcare and education for the common man is simply not a reality. In fact, you could go so far as to say the Indian dream today is to literally leave India and never turn back. The government could be said to be failing the people. In China, when the government sets a goal, it gets done. No debate, no delays, just execution. Meanwhile, India remains stuck in endless debates and corruption, making it impossible to compete with China's speed and efficiency. Reason number 5, global influence and soft power. China's global influence and soft power far surpass India's, driven by its economic dominance, technological leadership, and strategic diplomacy. As the world's second-largest economy and manufacturing hub, China is the #1 trading partner for over 120 countries, including major economies like the US, EU nations, and key players in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has reshaped global infrastructure, securing long-term economic and political ties with developing nations, while India struggles to match such investments. In technology, China leads in AI, 5G, and green energy, with companies like Huawei, Alibaba, and BYD influencing global markets, whereas India remains primarily an IT outsourcing hub. Culturally, China expands its reach through Confucius Institutes, global media like CGTN, and investments in entertainment, while India's Bollywood-centric soft power has limited diplomatic weight. China's permanent seat on the UN Security Council, strong alliances with world powers, and ability to broker international deals, from the Middle East to Africa, further cement its superiority. While India aspires to global leadership, its economic scale, infrastructure, and diplomatic reach lag behind China's well-established global network and comprehensive influence. The harsh truth is that while many like to believe that India will one day surpass China, the reality is clear. China is too far ahead in work ethic, infrastructure, cultural unity, political stability, and global influence. They are simply not on the same playing field. In every single area, whether it be infrastructure, education, healthcare, prosperity of the citizens, economy, and other factors such as companies, India simply should never be put in the same category as China. The facts are the facts, and the numbers don't lie. Nor is China even trying to compete with India, or anyone for that matter. Their number one goal has been stated many times and shown through action, which is to achieve prosperity for their citizens. While India has potential, it lacks the speed, efficiency, and discipline that have made China an economic powerhouse. Simply put, India is playing catch-up, and China isn't slowing down. What do you think? Is it just wishful thinking for India to catch up to China? Or do you think they have a chance to? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content like this. See you in the next video.